Peter Travers of Rolling Stone calls this movie a killingly funny spoof of crime and non-punishment. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times laments that he is not sure why this isn't very funny, but it's not. And Letterboxd user Von Trapp says, "I'm with her." On this episode of Ruined Childhoods, we decide the fate of Serial Mom.
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhoods podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters.
Kathleen Turner? Is that you?
Why, yes, how did you guess? Hello, everyone. Welcome to Ruined Childhoods, the podcast where we talk about movies and we talk about, because there seem to be very few original ideas coming out of the movie business these days into the theaters. What would we do with these things if we were given the money and no option whatsoever? No limits, no money, lots of money, no limits, and no choice, but
no problem.
Do something with them. Right, no problem, because we spend an hour or two each week talking about it. So we're ready. Like, if Hollywood, if you're listening,
yeah,
the entity of Hollywood.
Hi, Hollywood.
You know, I think we'd work cheap, and we've got an archive of ideas for you.
Dan, you say that we work cheap, but I don't know if you knew this, but Ruined Childhoods was listed in a top 20 trend podcasts article on whelpmagazine.com. I found out about this because they emailed us today to let us know, and it's a thing. It's they seem to have a lot of top podcast lists of 2021, and I can't say I know any of the other podcasts on that list, but thank you to the fine folks at Whelp Magazine. Because of you, we work a little less cheap.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, I'm hearing this for the first time right now.
I was wondering, I intentionally didn't text you about it.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, you were wondering if I saw the email come in.
Right.
Yeah, I did not know that. And when you first were talking about that, I was like, wait a second, there's another podcast called Ruined Childhoods? What do they talk about? And it did not sink in that you were talking about us, but yay, that's exciting.
No, it's
exciting. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's a real thing. So
yeah, that's awesome.
There's that.
Yeah. Okay. Well then, Hollywood,
that's my
better get us before we make any other lists.
Yeah, before we get too many more listeners aside from the literal dozens that we have now. And who we
love and appreciate.
Yes, we certainly do.
Who we love and appreciate. We're excited to have you with us. We're excited to talk about Serial Mom.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and by the way, just to say, it's been an exciting couple of weeks. It was especially exciting to be able to record with you live when we talked about Cabin Boy.
That was really nice.
Yes, it was so pleasant, and not that it's not pleasant recording the way that we do. I'm in Seattle. John is in Portland, Oregon.
True.
And yeah, but like just so pleasant to sit across the couch in real life and talk about a 1994 cult classic, as we shall do again this evening.
Right. Yeah. So this is I can't believe it's our first John Waters movie. It took us 119 episodes to get to John Waters, an auteur filmmaker, if there ever was one, who I love his work. It is not the kind of movie that you can, or it's not the type of movies that you can just watch anytime, that you just put on for the sake of putting on. It's like there's usually you have to be in a certain mode to really get into a John Waters movie.
Yes, although I do think that the stretch from Hairspray through, I would say, Pecker, possibly Serial Mom, I would put it at Pecker. I feel like that stretch of John Waters is like Crybaby. That's a fun movie.
Crybaby, I feel like is the most maybe commercial. Polyester, Hairspray.
I don't know about
maybe
polyester.
Not
I would still consider
Hairspray. I think has become, because of the transformation from screen to stage to screen. So there's just a little difference there. I really enjoy Pecker. What was that, like 98 maybe?
90, I believe 90. Yeah, actually, yeah, no, I think 98.
Wow, then cool. For me,
I was gonna say 97, but I don't know.
Well,
my dance sense told me
late
not to.
90s. Really fun movie that I really want to watch again, especially after watching Serial Mom. Was that right? 98.
98.
Yes.
Yeah. And in fact, like I used to. And if you're listening to this and you borrowed my DVD of Pecker, and by some miracle you still have it, you know what? Keep it. Enjoy it. Think of me when you watch it.
Yeah. Pecker's a fun movie. Serial Mom we're going to get into soon. Crybaby, I think, is definitely, I think because of Johnny Depp, maybe watched more, by a wider audience.
I think because of Johnny Depp, it was the bit like Hairspray was released by New Line Cinema in 88, and I rember like it got a theatrical release, but Crybaby, even though like it wasn't a big hit, I remember like Crybaby was like Universal Pictures, and it wasn't just like an independent company and Universal was like it was a Universal production,
right?
And it featured some fantastic songs and had Johnny Depp and Amy Locane, who we've spoken about before on the podcast, in School Ties.
Right.
I can't remember if we talked about her in any other.
We talked about her on the episode after Tango and Cash, because I feel like you were talking about how Crybaby, Amy Locane and Crybaby was a significant experience for you.
Yes. The movie Crybaby, I won't go into more detail about watching it for the first time. Not for any reasons other than we might talk about it at some point.
Sure. Yeah, so, I hope so.
No, Crybaby had so many great songs, the musical performances, it moved along fast. Iggy Pop is fantastic in it. I'm trying to remember who else pops up in that movie. Didn't hear that one come until it came out. I can't remember like who, the usual cast of characters: Mink Stoll, Patricia Hearst.
Sure. Yeah. So, and that's something that I want to talk about is kind of like the John Waters crew,
the players,
the John Waters players. I feel like John Waters is kind of like, if Andy Warhol like fell into a vat of acid, like these are the people that would have like come along on his posse. You have your Meg Stoll, you have your Tracy Lord, you have those types of people. I mean, Patty Hearst is, I love that she's part of his crew. She's fascinating.
Yeah. And
of course, Divine, just by the way, obviously Divine.
Yeah. And for people who aren't familiar with who Patty, or Patricia as she's credited, Hearst is, she's the granddaughter of William Randolph Hearst.
Yeah.
Granddaughter of so the heiress, like billionaire heiress of William Randolph Hearst, like huge publishing magnate, like billionaire, model for Citizen Kane.
Right.
And if you saw Mank, you certainly know who William Randolph Hearst is or was. And
Right.
Patricia Hearst was his granddaughter who was kidnapped in the 1970s and held for ransom by I forget what, like, it was like some liberation group, one of these, militant groups that kind of sprung from the hippie movement.
Sure.
And so she was kidnapped, but then became part of the gang.
Yeah, and
was like
robbed a
robbing
bank.
banks with
Yeah.
them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a movie that I believe also came out in 1988 about her called Patty Hearst.
Oh, Patty Hearst, right. Who played her in that one? I'm drawing a blank.
I want to say Patsy Kensit for some reason, but maybe it's just the Patsy
and
thing.
And she appears in Serial Mom, as does Tracy Lords and Mink Stoll, who's hilarious. And it's really fun watching her in this, and then like going back and remembering her in movies like Pink Flamingos, which was my foray into John Waters films. I remember I was at a summer camp, and there was like the group of, like older kids who, had this interest in film that kind of brought me into that world a little bit. And they were definitely into like the weirder stuff, like the trauma movies. And a lot of them actually went on to work on trauma movies. And actually, I want to make sure that I get his last name right, because there was a movie that came out, I want to say it was like 2 years ago. Sorry, I'm going to just take a second here.
Well, while you're doing that, let me clarify that it was Natasha Richardson. Who played Patty Hearst in Patty Hearst.
Okay, so one of the people who actually first showed me Pink Flamingos was David Yarevsky, who directed Brightburn. And was...
No kidding.
Yeah. So he was at the summer camp, and yeah, he was one of the guys. I remember he was quite the character, and has gone on to become quite successful, and very obviously taken the path that he seemed like he was going to be taking when he was like 17 or whatever it was. So
it's really nice when that happens.
Yeah, and Pink Flamingos, when I saw it, I could not believe what I was seeing, as was the response from most people who saw Pink Flamingos, not knowing what to expect. And it was something that I loved. I had a Pink Flamingos poster on my dorm, my freshman year of my dorm wall, my freshman year of college. Like it definitely just like left a huge impression. And it was somewhat of a signal to me that it's like, you don't have to do the things that are expected of you. You don't have to do things the same way. What's up?
Which, by the way, it's June, and we want to recognize Pride Month.
Yeah.
So, which, we talked about that wasn't in consideration when we picked a John Waters movie, because
we wanted to.
We're both fans of John Waters.
and we couldn't believe that we had taken so long without covering him.
Yeah. Yeah. But, it's with a concept like ours, it's tricky, because one of the things that we were discussing when we were picking this was that it's kind of like the John Waters movies that you would, do something with. It's like Hairspray, like you said, adapted into a Broadway musical,
right,
which was then adapted
wildly
into
successfully. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Adapted then into a successful film. Crybaby, not as successfully, was adapted into a Broadway musical. It did not last long.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I could
didn't see that.
Yeah, I could see that happening pretty easily.
Yeah, it's kind of like Crybaby's kind of like lightning in a bottle. Like it's Johnny Depp 1990.
Right.
So yeah, this is like, long before he became like silly hat Johnny Depp.
Yeah. This is Johnny Depp in his prime Johnny Depp.
Yeah. Well, yeah, though it's It's hard to say. I feel like Johnny Depp really had a moment in like the early 2000s around like Pirates of the Caribbean and Finding Neverland.
Right, but I'm thinking, post Edward Scissorhands, and this is at a time where, of course, post 21 Jump Street, where
Right.
it's like this is somebody who's breaking out of his kind of heartthrobby, like teen heartthrob persona and taking chances with people like Tim Burton on playing these odd characters, and working with people like John Waters, who
Jim Jarmusch.
Oh yeah, and Dead Man, that was early 2000s, I want to say.
I think that was I think that was 95.
That was 95
or 96.
Jeez. I think I just saw it and didn't know when it came out.
No, it does have a timeless.
Yeah.
It does have a really time. I mean, it's in black and white.
Yeah.
But it's very, it's such an interesting movie. It's a movie that I often think about going back to because I don't think I've ever fully gotten it, but it's like a movie that I'm like, I want to get this.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
but we're not here to talk about Dead Man.
No. Maybe another time.
I mean,
We'll
we're
see.
here to talk about a couple of dead men.
Yeah, so let's
that
get
are killed
into
by,
a little
Yeah.
synopsis. So, the Sutphins are your standard suburban family. Eugene is the town dentist. Just about everyone goes to see him. Chip is a high school student with a wild imagination and a love for cheesy horror flicks. Misty is a boy-crazy teen. And Beverly is a chipper housewife and stay-at-home mom who recycles. Oh, and she has a secret fascination with serial killers and prank calls her neighbors. But it's all good, clean fun, until she murders one of Chip's teachers after a parent-teacher conference gone wrong. Beverly will do anything for her family, and I mean anything. She also kills the object of Misty's affection, who dumped her for another girl. As the town and cops catch on to Beverly's bloodlust, they turn against her and do their best to catch her red-handed. She's finally caught when she kills Chip's friend Scotty, who witnessed her killing a woman with a leg of lamb as she watched the musical Annie. Beverly is caught by the police and a trial is held where Beverly decides to represent herself. She manages to discredit all of the witnesses or tricks them into siding with her, hypnotizing them with her raw sexuality. In the presence of the entire town, her family, a jury of her peers, and Suzanne Summers, who is slated to play Beverly in a biopic, Beverly is acquitted. But Beverly takes one more victim before leaving the courthouse. One juror who distracted her the entire trial by wearing white shoes after Labor Day and gets what's coming to her in a phone bank down the courthouse hallway. So Beverly is played by Kathleen Turner. Eugene is played by Sam Waterston, who, I mean, I appreciate him so much more since he's in a John Waters movie. John Waters' crew member, Ricky Lake, as Misty. Matthew Lillard, I believe, making his screen debut as Chip.
First leading role. I think he had had a couple of little bit parts.
Yeah, well, I mean, after this
yeah.
was SLC Punk and Scream and
Scream.
This definitely was his first big moment that really opened the
breakout.
door.
And may I say, while I've already interrupted, this I've just realized we've done a Ricky Lake double feature, as Ricky Lake appears in Cabin Boy.
That's right.
I don't know what
she's
you
like
call
the siren on the front of the boat.
The siren on the front, right,
Yeah.
of the filthy whore.
The filthy whore, that's right. Oh my God, I did not even put that together. So we have Mink Stoll as Dottie Hinkle, the woman who Beverly is tormenting with prank phone calls and like letters made from cutouts from magazines with obscenities on them, and it's just delicious. I'm actually going to play a quick clip of one of these prank calls.
Hello?
Is this the cocksucker residence?
God damn you, stop calling here!
Isn't this 4215 Pussy Way?
You bitch!
Now let me check the zip code. 212, fuck you!
Beverly! Beverly, darling! You home? The police are tracing this call this very minute.
Well, Dottie Hinkle, then why aren't they here, huh, fuckface?
Fuck you! Beverly, you home?
I know you are.
It's her neighbor who just walks in.
Oh, yeah.
Beverly? Didn't I just say fuck you?
I beg your pardon.
Who is this?
Mrs. Wilson from the telephone company. I understand you're having problems with an obscene phone caller.
Yes, I am. I'm sorry, Mrs. Wilson, but this is driving me crazy. I've had my number changed twice already. I'm a divorced woman. Please help me.
Beverly? Well, what exactly does this sick individual say to you?
I can't say the words out loud. I don't use bad language.
Oh, well, I know it's difficult, but we need to know the exact words.
I'll try. Cocksucker, that's what she calls me.
Listen to you, filthy mouth, you fucking whore!
God damn you!
Motherfucker!
Cocksucker!
Beverly? Rosemary, are you all right? Oh, yes, of course, I'm fine.
I feel like the most John Waters line in there is, "I'm a divorced woman. Please help me."
Well, yeah, and it's funny because that line seems so like, why is it in there? And this is before the flashback where you see that Dottie Hinkle like rudely steals a parking spot that Beverly is waiting patiently for with her signal on. But that made me think, I was like, is Beverly like tormenting her as a punishment for her being divorced? Because Beverly is like this,
Well,
she's...
here's the thing is that, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Beverly seems to have a problem instantly once somebody is breaking a rule. And
of society.
Well, but the thing is like, okay, so there's the one neighbor who doesn't recycle, and so she hates her for that. There's Scotty who doesn't wear his seatbelt, and she keeps on harping on that. You could tell she's getting bothered by the detectives because one of them is chewing gum, and she sees chewing gum as just like horribly rude. So I feel like the stealing the parking space is really the thing that she finds abhorrent. And I don't think that the divorce is so much.
Well, I was thinking of it in terms of like, I was thinking of it really in terms of kind of like more like, maybe not as much in the 90s, but in the 80s, there was still this like judgment, and Beverly, very much presents as like an 80s, even pre-80s homemaker.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that even one of the detectives refers to them as like the Cleavers.
The Cleavers,
Yeah.
right. So it wouldn't have been surprising if Dottie's, being divorced wasn't something that Beverly was like, oh, she's fair game then, because I could see, you could see her as being one of those, she adheres to these rules that are not just laws. I mean, the parking spot thing is not, Dottie Hinkle didn't break a law.
No,
she broke
she's
a
just rude.
societal courtesy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's the other thing I really love about the characters that Beverly goes after, is that they are, with the exception, I would say, of the juror played by Patty Hearst.
Well, she wears white after Labor Day.
She wears white after Labor Day, but it's what's interesting is there's a contrast. So everyone who Beverly kills is just obnoxious enough so that as an audience member, I don't feel bad. Like that teacher is, I mean, first, like, he's racist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's totally like it's almost the stereotype. By the way, he's like a math teacher who's pretending like he's the guidance counselor or something, because he tells the mother who's in there before Beverly, he's not college material.
Right.
And, this is when he's talking to a woman who's black. And,
Right. Yeah.
And she's like, she's like, oh, well, this is what we're thinking. And he's just like, well, I think and I'm, recognizing that as like something that is commonly reported from people who said, oh yeah, no, I totally went to a like racist school and this is what teachers said. So it's kind of like you already don't like him. And then he's making all of these other personal judgments. He's talking about pretty much anything other than math.
Yeah, so for Chip, the thing that he's talking to Beverly about is that he's been drawing, these kind of like these ghastly horror drawings during the class, which she's like, he's so imaginative and, she's so supportive of, her son who's got this creative mind. And yeah.
I mean, yeah, it just, it comes like he's personally judging. He's like, your son needs therapy. Right. I mean, like I'd be fired if I said, right? We'd at least get like, there would be consequences if I said something like that to a parent.
Right.
Like that's not, as a teacher, that's not my place.
Yeah.
To say that. I might like,
By the way, everybody, Dan mentioned that he's a teacher. Yeah. Take a shot.
Oh. Hey, it's relevant.
It's relevant.
Right now.
It's totally relevant.
So yeah, I mean, let's put it this way. I don't think any of my students' parents are going to run me down in the parking lot.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just, he's unlikable. So like when she kills him, you don't feel as bad.
Sure. Yeah, Misty's the guy who Misty was dating, who's off with another girl. The girl played by Tracy
Lords.
You don't like him instantly, and you're okay with her killing him with a a fireplace tool?
Yeah, like a fireplace poker.
Yeah. And so he gets his, and you certainly don't mind. I mean, the thing is, like, the people that she goes after are people who wrong her family and people who, clutch their pearls at the sight of, something that she doesn't believe in.
Right. I do. By the way, and then there's Mrs. Jensen.
Mrs. Jensen, is she the video store?
Mrs. Jensen, the video store, who loves Bill Cosby. And I mean, that joke, it's funny because that joke in the context of this movie, it just is funnier now that we know more about Bill Cosby's behavior, and he's she's so obnoxious, and the not rewinding.
Yeah, let's listen to that really quick.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mrs. Jensen. Good morning.
Haven't you had enough violence, Chip Sutphin? Turn that filth off.
Sorry, ma'am.
Do you have the musical Annie?
Sure do. Did you bring back Ghost, Dad?
There you go. I just love Bill Cosby pictures.
Miss Jensen, I've told you, you have to rewind the tapes before returning them.
Why?
Because it's the rules.
I don't feel like rewinding them.
You see that sign? It's a $1 fine for not rewinding, and this time I'm gonna charge you. $2.99 plus $1 is $3.99.
Keep the change, you son of a psycho.
What a bitch.
It's the influence of all those family films.
So I feel like the thing that bothers Beverly the most, who's, by the way, listening in from a back room, is that she broke the rules. Not so much that she, said something mean about her. She broke the rules.
Right. Well, the rule doesn't apply she broke the rules. But then there's also the case of the guy who, I forget the name of the guy and his wife who
the dental patient.
Yeah, the dental patient. She kills him because he was, I mean, he's just rude, and
he's rude.
He calls,
yeah.
He calls on they were supposed to go bird watching, and he ruins her plans with her husband. That's why she kills him.
Yeah. Yeah. And does she overhear him saying mean things about her husband? I remember him saying,
oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that because if I'm putting it together correctly, she was actually out to get Scotty, but I think that she goes past their house, or is she intentionally going to their house?
She's intentionally going to their house. They intercut it so that you don't, it's what, I forget what the trick is called in filmmaking.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Where they're editing
herring.
back and I guess a red herring, because the Sutphins think that she's going after Scotty because Chip says something about, oh, Scotty thinks you're the killer. And so they go to Scotty's house while she's going to the Sterner's house.
Sterner, right.
Yeah. And they show up at Scotty's, and he is masturbating. Meanwhile, Beverly is at the Sterners, and she I know she stabs Mrs. Sterner with the scissors.
Right.
And I forget. Oh, right. She pushes the air conditioner out onto Mr. Sterner.
Oh my God. Well, they were jerks.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like they were jerks. Dottie Hinkle steals the parking spot. Oh, who? I mean, for Scotty. I mean, yes, Scotty breaks the law with the seatbelt, but also witnesses her killing Mrs.
But
Jensen.
every time she talks about him, she always brings up the fact that he doesn't wear his seatbelt.
Right. So maybe that's, I don't know if that's maybe something in the writing that's a little, it never struck me as unclear as whether she was, it felt to me like they're breaking a rule, whether it's a formal rule or just a rule of society. Yeah. That's who she goes after.
Yeah. Well, either way, she does things in a way that make you still root for her. She's, you're on her side, and I feel like John Waters has a way, and Kathleen Turner definitely understood the assignment in terms of Twitter, trends. But Kathleen Turner fully got what John Waters was going for. And he has a way of bringing you into that character. And I feel like, because people like Matthew Lillard's character, Chip, and, her whole family, even though they know about her situation, they're still on her side. They're still in support of her. Same with Chip's girlfriend, whose name I'm blanking on. But I don't know, you kind of become part of their clan, part of their crew, and it's just fascinating.
Well, John Waters, his movies all take place in this like altered universe, this slightly altered universe.
Yeah, it's called Baltimore.
Yes, exactly. Not having spent a lot of time in Baltimore, I couldn't tell you. But yeah, I mean, I think people from Baltimore certainly have an appreciation for John Waters films that the rest of the world does not. But he creates a tone. Part of it is just, I was thinking about this during the opening credits, because I was also thinking about the opening credits of Pecker.
Okay.
But I think it's like just Pecker like going around and taking like pictures of weird things around Baltimore, and the John Waters, like the written and directed by John Waters credit, is always on something either just grotesque or off-putting. Like in Pecker, I think it's like Pecker's taking a picture of two rats having sex.
Oh yeah.
And that's where they're written into right. And this one, it's like the like squashed fly.
Right.
Is the written, and it was funny because I was actually like, I was as I'm watching it and I'm watching the credits and I see she's gonna kill the fly. Even before she kills the fly, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Written and directed by John Waters is
That's
over.
funny.
The
You know,
dead
I didn't
fly.
know that about his films. That's the style.
I mean, I'm saying this for two of his several movies.
Right,
I can't
but I'm
remember.
curious to like go back and look at some of the other ones because it feels like something that he would definitely do intentionally.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where I feel like a lot of, you know, like the reviews of Serial Mom that we're talking about, like maybe it being uneven or things like that. I feel like John Waters is very intentional with his choices.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the way that he presents this film on the surface of being like a family film. And, you know, it's not presented the same way that Pink Flamingos is presented. It's not presented the same, well, I mean, definitely, but it's also not presented the same way that Crybaby is presented. It's kind of got its own vibe to it, and you can tell that he puts a lot of care into making sure that you are comfortable in that world and that you understand the vibe that he's going for. And yeah, he just does such a good job with it. I really appreciate his work.
Well, and I feel like a lot of his work really, it has a toe, if not an entire foot, in that like 1950s, 1960s, like just it's kind of about what's beneath the surface. Of that, you know, the shiny surface, which I think why Divine was such a perfect leading lady, for him, because it Divine represented, I think Divine like represented that, like, we're gonna show you the surface, but we're also gonna show you what is beneath the surface, and you're gonna appreciate.
Well, that's also why that photo that's been going around the past 5 years of Donald Trump and Divine's reaction to him back in the 80s, I believe, could have been, probably 80s, early 80s maybe. You know, it's such a perfect vision of Donald Trump, you know, because you have the reaction from the person that recognizes, you know, scum and filth.
Divine knows a piece of shit when she sees one.
That is absolutely true. So, and it's fascinating.
It's funny you mentioned Donald Trump because I was reading an interview with Kathleen Turner because, you know, Kathleen Turner has not been very active recently.
No.
I think she has made some appearances on the Kaminsky Method, the Michael Douglas.
I've been meaning to watch that.
I definitely, after seeing that Kathleen Turner has made some appearances, that interests me more, especially after watching Serial Mom.
Yeah.
Because Kathleen Turner was such a huge star.
Romancing the Stone. Yeah.
Body Heat, Accidental Tourist, you know, I mean, Jewel of the Nile, sequel to Romancing the Stone. Peggy Sue Got Married, which I watched recently.
I believe it's on our list.
Yeah. And, you know, the voice of Jessica Rabbit, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. So Kathleen Turner is such a, you know, a wonderful actress. And this interview with her, it was from, I was really curious. I knew that she had been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis.
Right. Yeah. I remember hearing that too.
And that was affecting her. And read this interview with her on Vulture from August 2018. And she talks about like meeting Donald Trump at a party and like this gross handshake where he like took his finger and like stroked her wrist when she shook his hand, and she was, it is like in this interview you could tell like she just has no fucks to give.
Yeah.
And she's just like, I mean, ew. Like, how else do you react? War of the Roses, is another one. Pritzi's Honor, just to kind of like throw out.
She's
a few of
she's
these.
Fantastic, and I love that she did this movie. And you know, when people are in John Waters movies, like it's kind of like the opposite of when I find out that somebody's in a Woody Allen movie. You know. It just shows a judge of character, and if you are the type of person who enjoys watching John Waters movies and appreciates that type of film, and you know that a certain actor either wants to or has been in like one of his movies, you know, their stock goes up a little bit. And what I will also say is that somebody like Johnny Depp, I think in was it 1990 that Crybaby came out, like, you know, that was still, we didn't know at that time yet if he was going to become the creep that we are finding out about now, but we certainly know that at that time he was making really bold decisions to work with really creative and out there filmmakers.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Also, it's like John Waters, I think, has always been very honest about who he is. He hasn't this, right. and he's also like not an awful person. And I think you know that because of his honesty. Also, because like no one has ever had anything to the best of my knowledge. No one has ever had anything negative to say about John Waters. No one who's worked with him, at least.
No, and you know, he's very much himself. He, you know, has defined and cultivated a look and a persona, and it's somebody that, you know, you would recognize the second you saw them, and you gotta love that.
Yeah. I mean, definitely big fan. I some of his movies, like Pink Flamingos, I found was I mean, maybe I need to go back and watch it again. It's been a while. That one was a bit challenging for me. But yeah, so what's interesting is that Kathleen Turner was not necessarily. I don't know if that was who he originally wanted, but I know that they had talked about other actresses. I saw Julie Andrews' name mentioned as a possibility, and like Meryl Streep, Glenn Close. If you think of the you know, actresses of that time who would play you know, a character of that age, that type of role, it's
a June Cleavery type of character,
right. But I think that it was just perfect with Kathleen Turner. Like you said, she understood the assignment.
Yeah. And I think that clip of her doing the prank calls was, you know, a great example of, you know, what this character was meant to be from the very beginning.
She has so much fun, and all the like the moments where she's writing the notes on the notepad before she starts representing herself, when she's writing the notes about like juror number 8 wearing white shoes after Labor Day. It was so funny, and that, just how that is like that's what gets her. And this woman is such a sympathetic juror to her.
Yeah, no, here actually let's listen to the moment at the very end when she actually meets the juror.
We did it. We set her free. I knew she was innocent right from the beginning.
You can't wear white shoes after Labor Day.
That's not true anymore.
Yes, it is. Didn't your mother ever tell you? Now you know.
No, please. Fashion has changed.
No. It hasn't.
It's such great dialogue, but I also think of all of her victims, and it's so brilliant that this real, like, the movie ends pretty much right after,
Yeah.
like not long after this, like they're in the they're in the hallway, and she just wants to like get out before anyone finds the body. And meanwhile, like Suzanne Summers wants to like do a photo op, and it ends before you really see if there's going to be any, I mean, I guess she can't be tried for the same crime again. I don't think. So is that a
I don't know.
double jeopardy? No.
I don't know.
I mean, I'm basing my knowledge on the Ashley Judd film, so.
Oh. Yeah, our legal expert is not in the room at the moment, but yeah. So going back to what we were just talking about with the actors who are in John Waters movies, being of a certain, I don't know, like street cred, type of situation. I do question that for Suzanne Summers. Part of me wonders if she actually knew what she was like getting into with this movie.
I think she knew she was getting into a paycheck.
She's going to do a paycheck, a Kathleen Turner movie. I think that's pretty much, I don't know. I'd love to know how that all went down, aside from the getting a paycheck situation.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like Suzanne Summers is one of those personalities that John Waters would just be looking for the opportunity to put into a movie.
Yeah.
There's that whole "The Judge, I loved you on Three's Company."
Yes.
line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we don't. I love the choice that when she finally kills someone who, as an audience member, you don't necessarily dislike, doesn't do anything dislikable, and in fact is on the side of our protagonist.
Yeah.
And Waters doesn't necessarily give you, first of all, you're bought in. You've bought in by that point.
Well, so here's my 2 cents on that situation. I get the feeling that Beverly suspects that juror is wearing white shoes every single day in order to distract her. Because we have to remember that, like, Beverly doesn't think rationally. She is a serial killer. She has a fascination with serial killers. She, corresponds with Ted Bundy. Like, there are, things about her that, begin way before this movie takes place. So she doesn't think rationally. And most, like, other serial killers, she probably believes that there's some sort of conspiracy going on. And what it could be something as simple as somebody wearing white shoes after Labor Day just to fuck with her. Look, it's just a theory.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, she definitely is distracted by it. I just don't know that I'm entirely convinced that the juror, or that she thinks that. I don't think she. I don't get.
I'm going mostly based on her visual reaction to it, the way that her face reacts every time she notices the shoes, and the way that the juror, who is Patty Hearst, by the way, the way that the juror kind of has her feet placed in a very prominent way.
She's in the front row.
I know, but the way when you have the shots of them, it's almost like the feet do the motions to kind of draw attention to them.
There's a close-up.
Oh my goodness. Not the way that the camera moves, the way that her feet move.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah.
It's just a
hit. Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, I got you. I mean, no, I understand it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know. I feel like if she were killed just because of, I don't know, breaking a societal rule, an informal, like a written in stone law, then what would have stopped her from doing something about people chewing gum? Is it just because she already then had opened up the, the vault?
But she does kill
coming
people
out?
for doing. I mean, like the math teacher doesn't do anything illegal, and it's not right. Well, okay, so the math teacher, right, kind of insults her son. So
yeah,
you have that, but I mean, she kills the dentist patient.
Yeah, because they're disrespecting her family.
Right. It's just they're disrespecting, like they demanded her husband's time when he was scheduled to be off. It's not illegal. Right. It's just fucking rude.
No. So Dan, first of all, I mentioned how John Waters came into my life. What was your introduction to John Waters?
I think Hairspray. I think just like
Really?
I think just Hairspray, being aware of it, and I probably rented it when it came out on VHS. I'm pretty sure that was how I first saw it, and I think I saw that before I saw Crybaby. I mean, otherwise it was Crybaby, and you could check out the Tango and Cash episode to
yeah.
But that's
no, it was the episode after the Tango and Cash episode,
was it?
I believe.
Yeah. Oh, what? I know, because I thought I remember having that conversation because we had Eric Goslin on for Tango and Cash, and I feel because it was after, because Gabrus was talking about it for Double Impact, for some reason Double Impact. Anyway.
Anyway,
check out the Tango and Cash episode and the episode after that, the other one.
Yeah. Just going back to what you were saying, and Hairspray, I'd love to do a double feature of Shampoo and Hairspray.
Wow. Do you know, I've never seen Shampoo.
Really? I watched it maybe like 8 years ago or something. But it's one that I've always wanted to revisit.
I've always wanted to watch it, but have not kind of gone out of my way. And it's also never streaming on any of the multitude of. It's
Warren Beatty. Did he direct that?
No, Hal Ashby directed that.
Hal Ashby directed it?
Warren Beatty, Goldie Hawn, right? And I can picture her face, but I can't think of her name. It's driving me crazy. Julie Christie?
I don't know.
So Dan, I think you were about to ask me the question I was about to ask you, because you mentioned,
is it what you would do with this movie?
Yeah, well, you had mentioned earlier, not too much earlier, a couple of minutes ago, that there's a lot of stuff about Beverly that from before this movie that we don't know about. So I guess my question is that what you're thinking?
No, I had a hard time with this one, especially, for the exact reasons why, maybe we hadn't covered John Waters before, because his films are so specific, and, there's so much that, he is intentionally not telling us about. And, if John Waters wanted to do something, I'm sure he would, so I thought that it would be fun to have some sort of comic book series that maybe, I don't know if it would explore the rest of her family, or just, a continuation of her story that's maybe not, not what would necessarily be in a sequel, because I don't think that there necessarily needs to be one story. I think that there could just be kind of living with my mom, the serial killer kind of a situation, the acquitted secret serial killer.
So it'd be funny if it was being drawn from Chip's perspective.
Yeah, or doing it kind of like Dexter, but instead of, this dark, brooding guy, it's, this happy, housewife and stay-at-home mom.
Well, and funny you should mention Dexter, because that was certainly one of the inspirations between what I was thinking about, which was a series. And I had a brief moment where I was like, serial grandma? What can we do to get Kathleen Turner back in the role? But there's something that would feel forced about it. And I was thinking about a series, and then I read an interview from 2017 on Entertainment Weekly it was Oral History of Serial Mom. It was Kathleen Turner and John Waters. And there had actually John Waters' idea was a series, because they pretty much discuss, like, was there ever going to be a sequel? And so he said, there was talk of different things. He says, I think it would make a good TV series where she kills once a month and you build to that every 3 episodes. And I was thinking, I was like, there's so many other shows that along those lines, like Weeds and Breaking Bad and Dexter, where it's this double life. And I was thinking about it. And first I was thinking about just like other actresses over the years who would have been good. Like I imagine Sally Field.
Sally Field, she's so wonderful. I'm sure we've talked about how great Sally Field is before.
We have, but it's always worth mentioning. Sally Field is great. Yeah. So, but of course, if you were to do this now, I thought about, so there were a couple of names I thought about, because I'm like, oh, if you do this now, who do you cast? And there were a couple of people I thought about who would be really, who I think would be really good. Like Christina Applegate, I think is kind of and it seemed to me like an obvious choice. Tracy Ellis Ross of Blackish, who's playing, right. but the person who I really felt, I was like, oh, she would nail this, and this would be like, this would make her a star, is Jennifer Robertson of Schitt's Creek.
Oh,
Jocelyn Schitt.
Oh my God, Jocelyn Schitt. Yes. She'd be fantastic. I mean, that she can do that troubled, but on the surface is trying to keep up appearances.
Definitely. I think Jennifer Robertson would make...
Yeah, we've talked about her before.
We have. Yeah. I feel like, though, when we had talked about her before, I had not yet watched Schitt's Creek. Okay. And like
she's tremendous.
Mentioned, I think I'd seen like an episode or two. And
yeah, and it's funny because I was even thinking of, talking a bit more about Schitt's Creek on the last episode, because we were talking so much about Chris Elliott. And sorry to kind of take a little side route here, but this more relates to Chris Elliott and Cabin Boy. But Chris Elliott, in my opinion, is, first of all, I love him on Schitt's Creek, but in a lot of ways, I kind of see him as the weakest link on that show. And that just is, but the thing is, like, he's fantastic on that show. And it's like, for me, like, if Chris Elliott is ever like the weakest link on a show, that's a damn good show.
Right.
And, it only gets better from him, and he's incredible on that show.
Yeah, I also think he, like, not just his character, but his performance evolves over the course of the series.
It does. Yeah.
But Jennifer Robertson, I have to say, is steady and
yes.
Perfect. Like, there are lines. There's this one line that she has that I it's one of those lines that just sticks in your head, though I can't remember the exact wording of it. And it's something like, if you have never been in bed with a naked Roland Schitt, you have no idea what I'm like. Her delivery of that line is so funny. And
no, she's fantastic.
Wow. I'm so sorry for this. It's a total tangent, but I need to share this. And I was going to share it earlier, but this is total, like, out left field, sharp turn here.
Okay.
So how sometimes there are certain lines from movies, maybe they're movies that you haven't seen a lot or haven't seen in a while, but they're still stuck in your head. And for years, I would say, for the last few years, there has always been this line that has echoed in my head whenever we're ordering, ordering food, whether it's out somewhere or ordering takein. and we order something on the side, and I always in my brain just go on the salad, which I finally realize is from Stuart Saves His Family.
Oh my God. I think about Stuart Saves His Family all the time.
But it was as random as that line popped into my head, and it had been years where I was like, what is that from? What is that from? It's driving me crazy. And then it finally, like, it's kind of like my brain filled in the rest of the scene, and there's like, Al Franken in the Get Up. So anyway, sorry, you reminded me of that, and had to share.
That's too funny. I think about Stuart Saves His Family a lot because, and I'm a big Vincent D'Onofrio fan, but I feel like my introduction to him really wasn't Stuart Saves His Family.
Donnie.
I definitely saw him before, like in Adventures in Babysitting. Like he was around. I saw him in things, but the time that I really remembered him from, that was Stuart Saves His Family.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So anyway,
what an unlikely SNL movie spinoff.
It really is, and it's. But I haven't seen it in a long time. But I mean, used to watch it fairly regularly and found it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was on like Comedy Central regularly.
I'm pretty sure it was on a VHS tape that did not stray far from my VCR.
Yeah, probably that too.
So
yeah. Anyway, John Waters movies, they're really difficult to imagine a life after the original. I mean, I think that the, Hairspray becoming a musical and that musical then becoming a movie, that makes a lot of sense. And I really appreciate the ways that, and I've actually only really seen some clips from it. I haven't seen the whole movie of the musical adaptation, but it seems like it really does honor the John Waters vision.
It does. It's a movie that I don't think I expected to like it. This is the musical film version, not the original film. I really didn't have high expectations, but I remember really enjoying it, and and John Travolta, who plays Edna Turnblad. I remember enjoying his performance.
Yeah, he got the assignment.
Yeah, he did. He did. And I thought,
it helps that there's source material.
Well, yeah, but it's like it's hard because Divine played that role in the original film, and then Harvey Fierstein originated it on Broadway.
Yeah,
I mean, and for me, it was hard to imagine anyone other than Divine in that role. But yeah, I was surprisingly pleased.
And that one for me, made John Travolta's like stock go up in my, my mind a little bit.
Right. Even though John Waters, I don't know how involved he was. Like, I think he might have been a producer on it.
Yeah.
That's the other challenging thing about doing anything more with John Waters properties is it's hard to imagine doing them without his involvement.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
yeah,
I don't know. So John Waters, if you're listening, I am putting forth this idea for the series with the caveat that you should be. I think that's where the by the way, where the comic book series, that's where you can. I think that's where you can have writers who understand John Waters' humor take over. I feel like doing something in TV or film without John Waters being involved is challenging.
Yeah, although who I would involve if there was to be some sort of television or film project about one of John Waters' films that he wouldn't be like, the executive producer, really like running it. John Cameron Mitchell.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I feel like he's kind of a spawn of the John Waters subculture.
Kind of. Yeah. It would be interesting to know, like, if there's like a John Waters like protege.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking about, well, I mean, Hedwig, obviously, but like things like Short Bus, where it's like somebody who's, not afraid to take risks and, celebrate the weirdos,
Right,
and kind of go into that world. So I feel like John Cameron Mitchell would be, who I would want to handle a John Waters spin-off or sequel or something like that.
You got no arguments from me. I'm a big fan of John Cameron Mitchell.
Yeah. John Cameron Mitchell. That's the
I
guy.
unfortunately did not get to see him on stage in Hedwig and the Angry Inch. I saw, I think I saw Michael Severus play Hedwig on stage off Broadway, who I think was, I forget if he was the first replacement for John Cameron Mitchell or the second, but goddamn, Hedwig and the Angry Inch, man, awesome show to see live. Also an awesome movie.
And John Cameron Mitchell was in the movie, right?
He was in the movie and
directed
it.
it.
The movie was the original cast of the show, or at least like for him and the character of Yitzhak, played by Miriam Shore. Miriam Shore was in the film. I think what's awesome about that movie, just to be ever so brief about it, is that it fleshes out a lot that you only hear about in the stage show. Like, they work very well independently of each other.
Got it.
Yes. So they're a recommendation, and not to mention a great recommendation during Pride Month, but also any
of course.
time of the year. It's awesome.
Yeah. So, Dan, why don't you tell everyone what we're going to be covering on our next episode?
Oh, yes. So we are leaving 1994 and Ricky Lake and and Chris Elliott, or people associated with Chris Elliott. No, we're going back to 1975 for the Sidney Pollack espionage thriller 3 Days of the Condor, starring Robert Redford, Faye Dunaway, Max von Sydow, Cliff Robertson, other people whose names are not coming to mind.
It's a cool movie. It's the genre that I have been really feeling a lot lately. So
Well, I
watched it not too long ago, and I'm excited to watch it again.
I watched Sneakers recently, so it's very much in that Robert Redford espionage.
Robbie
Redford.
Robbie Red. And I, not to talk too much about it already, but it's based on a book, which I believe is like 6 Days of the Condor, and I am going to try to do a little bit of research on that too. I won't have time to read the whole thing, but I love that kind of stuff. I think it's so much fun, especially like 1970s.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm a sucker for 1970s cinema.
Yeah. So everybody, feel free to reach out to us. Let us know what you think. ruinchildhoodspod@gmail.com. We also have a number of links on our link tree, linktr.ee/ruinchildhoods.
John, before we sign off here, I statute of limitations.
Oh, okay. So anybody who's listened to this show for the past 100 or so episodes knows that, we talk a lot about, from time to time, movies that were Academy Award winners or nominees that maybe didn't deserve to be there for one reason or another. In a lot of cases, it's that a lot of movies were overlooked because they were not made by straight white men, mostly. And a lot of, black directors were overlooked for too long, and, weren't given opportunities because of the voting body of the Academy. And so we had talked about doing something called the Hindsight Awards at one point, and the idea kept on kind of like popping back and forth in my mind. And a reason why I didn't decide to really pursue it is because if I was going to do it, I wanted to do it right. And that would mean, it not being voiced by me or Dan, straight white men, and rather kind of assemble panels of, people from all walks of life who are film experts or enthusiasts who really know about what they're talking about in terms of the unknown cinema of, I guess like the late 1920s until present day. And there's a lot of underrepresented nationalities, subcultures, things like that just weren't known to a lot of people. And so Rode Microphones, a company that I like a lot that's based in Australia, I'm using one of their mics right now. They do a podcast competition, I think once a year. This might be the third year they're doing it. And, people submit 1 to 2 minute little snippets. So they have a panel of judges and, all who are big in the podcasting field, and they listen to all the submissions and decide which is the best. And there are certain runners up and things like that. And there's also an audience voting award. And that link is also in our link tree to go check that out and vote. And I'd really appreciate it. I feel like if I have the ability to say that this concept won this competition, or really any competition, I would have a better chance at pitching it to podcast networks to make it easier to fund the podcast so that I'd be able to compensate the panelists properly for their time and their thoughtful consideration for each of these episodes. And 1929 was the year of the first Oscars ceremony, and that means if we're doing it year by year, that's a lot of episodes to do this for. So sorry, that's a lot of talking for me, but I would love it if you would cast your vote. It would mean a lot to me, to both of us, probably.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm like, yeah, I'm totally, so I voted totally in support of this project, and would love to see it happen. Would maybe love to see it make it onto some lists and jack up that price, Hollywood.
Yeah.
Come on. Get us before we hit 3 figures.
Jeez. We get there. So, check it out. Cast your vote. The clip that's on there is just a 1.5 minute long trailer, essentially, of what the show would be. So, yeah, please check it out. And Dan, as you are running away from that blue station wagon in a suburb of Baltimore, I wish you a good journey.
Good journey.